All right, Tech Rodeo, we're here with Ben from RevTerra, an incubated company here at Greentown Labs. Ben, how did you find your way to Houston?
I'm actually from Houston. I did my PhD here, PhD in physics, did a couple postdocs after that, and then moved back here to work at Rice for a bit. And after that, I decided to commercialize the magnetic bearing technology that we developed.
Awesome. And what is this technology? What are you hoping to solve?
Yeah, so the main problem we're working on solving is basically when you have a high penetration of renewable power on the grid, you need a lot of energy storage to even out that power production over a 24-hour period of time. So there's definitely technologies out there that are working on solving this, but all of them have some pretty big obstacles and pitfalls. So the technology we're working on is a clean alternative to lithium-ion batteries, which has a really long lifespan and doesn't cause some of the negative environmental impact.
Yeah, so this is really important because as we learned with the Texas storm, when you have renewable power go down, oftentimes the cost of storage is not calculated in the full cycle of delivering that power, and you need some methodology to provide the baseload. Is that kind of the founding idea? Well, this is a really big problem. I want to be on the forefront of solving it. Is that where it kind of comes from?
Yeah, so one thing that a lot of people don't realize is an area just about 100 square miles in a sunny area like Arizona can provide enough solar power to power the entire country. Mm-hmm. But so it's entirely feasible that we could get to an entirely renewables powered grid, but sure. You need the energy storage to have base load power. So you don't give people power in the afternoon and then they have to do something else in the evening. So it's an integral component in getting to a renewables powered grid, and it's not there yet, too expensive or other issues. Yeah. So it's a problem that really needs to be addressed.
So you have an idea, you come to a space like Greentown Labs. What are they providing you to help you get your concept from sheet of paper to a prototype to the next level?
Yeah, so Greentown Labs provides an excellent space just in terms of lab space for incubating the idea. For an early stage company, you can kind of parcel out a small, 100 square foot lab area and work on building up your proof of concept or your demo system. But in addition to that, they provide a lot of resources just in terms of connecting you with potential partners, investors, and just all around providing that guidance that you need to help get you to the next step.
Well, Ben, are you hiring? Are you open to having inbound communication? And how do people get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So they can check out our website, www.revterra.io. We're definitely looking for strategic partnerships with large, utility companies or others that can help us validate our technology. And we're certainly open to, any potential communications.
Awesome. What do you see as, the advantage of being part of a broader community? Do you see you put a lot of stock into what Greentown is providing in terms of contact with entrepreneurs, both here and in Boston?
Yeah, absolutely. So, especially over the past year, there's been a lot of, virtual communication and virtual events linking the Houston Greentown Labs and the Boston Greentown Labs. So I definitely think there's been a lot of value in connecting with other startups. Obviously, the Boston location has a lot more because the Houston one just started. So we've had a Slack channel and been kind of like meeting new startups once a week through that, and just getting lessons learned from other startups and what they went through at a similar stage has been super helpful.
What's your advice to an entrepreneur that's maybe considering having their career go down the energy transition route? What would you say to somebody thinking that through?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is focus on developing a skill in a certain area. So just focus on digging deep in a specific field, because that's one thing that's really useful, is when you have technical expertise or other expertise in a certain area that you can translate, whether it's working with another startup or starting your own. It's, when you first start out, you have to be the one who's building out that proof of concept or that demo, and nobody else can really do it for you. So it helps to have the background or the chops to do that, and spending some time doing projects on the side can help you achieve that.
Awesome. Well, really appreciate your time. I'm really excited to see what you build.
Thanks.
Well, Brad, thanks for joining us today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'd love to. My name is Brad Versace. I get out of bed every day because I really believe in inspiring and advancing humanity. The way I like to do that is with my life's work, which brings together neuroscience and design and technology and a healthy dose of imagination. I serve as creative director in Accenture's Innovation Hub here in Houston. And some of my big, beautiful questions right now are around what is the human experience in a carbon zero world? What is the role of design and racial and gender equity? And just really thinking about how do we humanize technology and should we humanize technology?
Awesome. Well, we're sitting in Greentown Labs space. It's here in basically the heart of Houston. How do you think Houston plays into your role specifically, and why are you here in Houston?
Awesome. Well, Houston is my favorite color, so I think that's a big part. And the reason that it is we're the most diverse city in the country. We have this thriving culture scene everywhere, from the way our culinary scene has just erupted over the past number of years to the art scene that we have. And I really do believe culture plays a very critical role in our community, how we see ourselves, and the types of challenges that we solve. And here in Houston, we solve the hard challenges. We have put humans on the moon. We are doing amazing things in the energy sector. Energy truly energizes humanity, which is really exciting, right? And if you think about what we do in the medical center and the way that we cure incurable diseases, the role that we've played during the pandemic, is absolutely just a really awesome community that believes in and is very focused on solving the hard challenges. And when we think about energy transition as one of our next big challenges, or as I like to say, big, beautiful priorities, we get the opportunity to think about it, how we want to play a role in that, going from the energy capital of the world to the energy transition capital of the world.
Yeah. So, there's a gap between how a technology is created and how it's de-risked and how it's proven to be made useful, and actually bringing that technology to the world in a way that can impact and scale it. How is Accenture thinking about these things? What do you like to see as ideas start to come off the page and into something physical?
Yeah, I heard this talk a number of years ago at South by Southwest, and it was titled "Moment, Momentum, Movement," and it just really stuck with me. And since then, I've actually developed a model around that inside of the Innovation Hub with our team. That's Moment, Momentum, Movement, or the M03 model for short. And really, the whole idea of it is that everything really starts with a moment in time. And when you can identify that moment as something that can become sticky, that you can then focus on and start to go through that exploration phase, that dream phase, if you will, really start to identify the challenges, the opportunities, the goals, the objectives that you really believe in and see as valuable. I think that's the first thing that you have to be able to do. And energy transition is a really good example of that, because it is something that we have identified that is a challenge, a really hard challenge that we need to all rally together to solve for. And the next thing you have to do is build momentum around that, because moments can fade very quickly. And so how do you accelerate that momentum and really start to drive forward together as one community coming together? And that's also why I believe that Houston is absolutely the right place to do this, because we have that type of spirit within all of us. We love to solve the hard challenges, and we know how to rally together. Look at our innovation ecosystem. It is a true testament of the entire community coming together around something that we all believed in. And here we are a number of years later with an emerging and on the verge of being a thriving tech and innovation ecosystem. And so now imagine activating that entire ecosystem to come together around this priority. And then that gets us to how we actually scale, which is in creating the real movement that will become the energy transition movement.
Well, Brad, really appreciate your time. I'm excited to see what Accenture and the companies that you work with do in the coming years, and as we sit in this space, which I believe you guys had a huge impact in sketching out. What are you excited about?
Oh man, one of the cool things that came out of the strategy that we developed with the community is called TCRI. And so if you break it down, it's talent times collisions times resources times impact. And so if you think about that as 4 categories that are really important to a thriving innovation ecosystem, like super cool way to kind of frame it and distill it down and demystify it. So the talent piece is really important, both the talent that we have here in Houston and the talent that we need to attract. The collisions is really important because Houston is 89th in density, yet 4th in population. So we have to find ways to create both digital and physical density that's going to bring the entire community together. Our resources, right? We need the funding, we need the emotional support, we need the rally cry and the belief system that's going to bring it all together. And ultimately, we have to all believe in how we're going to create that movement in order to really scale impact. And those are bringing that all together. The cool thing is that it's multiplied. And so if any one of it goes to zero, the whole thing goes to zero.
Yeah. So I really liked your momentum movement comment that you made earlier. What, do you see examples of that here in Houston?
I mean, so many. I mean, just look at where we're sitting right now. Greentown Labs is a phenomenal example of that. I mean, one, we are super thankful and grateful that they chose Houston as their second home. And we're really excited about the statement that they're making in the market and the way that they're looking at energy transition. And the fact that they have wanted to and chosen to come here, I think is a testament of how the innovation ecosystem is continuing to evolve and thrive. I mean, being able to take that talent piece, bring the talent here and give a space for existing talent and startups to really thrive and be incubated and accelerated is super exciting. And then you look at a group like Halliburton Labs, that, as they call themselves, the Scalerator, which is such an awesome term. They really have the ability to kind of pick up at that next evolution of the startup
as it starts to move into that momentum piece.
Yeah, exactly. And that really is how momentum forms. Momentum forms during that Scalerator time period, and giving them the access and the exposure and the resources that those startups really need to thrive. And that is how we're going to create this movement around energy transition.
Super excited for it. Can't wait to see what happens next.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
All right, Tech Rodeo. We're sitting down with Julianna, the CEO of Greentown Labs here in Houston, and I'm really excited to bring you in on the process. Obviously, as a Houstonian, we've been watching this campus grow up out of nothing. I used to drive by the old Fiesta, and I can say with great confidence and a lot of excitement that it looks a lot better now.
Well, it has a different purpose, but we're very happy on how it looks like now. Thank you.
So, what space are we in right now? What is this room for? It's
so
big.
This is the prototyping lab. So we're called Greentown Labs because 60% of our spaces, we have 3 buildings in Boston and now 1 building here, are actually for prototyping. So 80% of our companies
like physical devices.
Physical, yes. 80% of our companies are hardware companies. So they have a hardware component. So that means that, they need to make and break stuff before they get it right. And we help them with that. One of the things we do is crowdsource the space so that it becomes pretty flexible and the tools they need and the means to help them in all kinds of prototyping, small scale manufacturing, supply chain. And that's kind of our secret sauce, help them to get there. A lot of these companies, hardware companies, tackle very different problems that are, not easily solved in a normal incubator accelerator space. That's why we have this space that is combined with a co-working side so that they can do both. And then we crowdsource the tools so that they tell us what they need. In general, we have 24/7 3D printers, but many other things, and we get them for them so that they can all use it. And basically what we bring is flexibility. Many of our hardware companies would have otherwise have to rent a big warehouse and, have like a 5-year lease or more. In our case, our lease, our membership, that's how we call it, is monthly membership. And not only we supply the space, we also supply all the kind of help they need for prototyping, but also to make their company grow. So access to investors, access to grants, access to corporations where they can get pilots or get them as customers or investors. So all of this ecosystem that, has been siloed, we're trying to bring it all together to Greentown Houston.
So this is built off of the original location, I guess, in Boston, where they've been building for 10 years. And how many startups have gone through there? And are they participating with the ecosystem companies that are coming into Houston?
Yeah, so 330 companies have gone through Greentown Houston. Of course, this year is our 10th anniversary. So we've done quite a lot. And some of the companies are already here. One of the companies, actually Soilfy, was invited to our grand opening. We invited 5 Boston members, and Antonio decided to stay. He's like, you know what? I'm staying here. I think I'm not going back to Boston.
He's not the only one that's come to Houston and decided to stay.
Yes. So that's one of the things we want to do here, create a density. When we started in Boston, we were in a smaller warehouse south of Boston. Then we grew bigger and we moved to Somerville in the outskirts of Boston. We ended up having 3 buildings, and extra official 4th with our alumni have moved to, and we share the same landlord with. We're hoping to do the same here. You know, in Boston, we grew, we doubled the size of our membership of our startups every 2 years and a half. And basically, we had to open a new building. And we hope it will be the same here. So I think the innovation ecosystem here has been really thriving. A lot of it has been accelerators. And sometimes, in some cases, when you have an accelerator programs, the companies come, take what they need, and then they go back. We really hope that having a place, a physical space where they can stay and continue to develop their prototypes and their companies will create the density we want in this whole innovation district.
Well, the density is important because once you start a company, you learn so many lessons along the way. It's nice to be able to be able to stick around so that you can help the peers behind you in their journeys as well. Is that part of the mission?
Definitely. You know, I think we have transformed Somerville. It used to be called Slummerville before we came in. So, and now you actually have biotech companies that were in Boston moving to Somerville. We hope we can do the same here. And really, one of the things that we do is help with all the supply chain. And once you set up your supply chain, you don't want to move too far from it.
Of course, yeah. No, that totally makes sense. So I imagine that a successful, business or incubation group in Boston could have moved anywhere in the country. What brought Greentown to Houston? Was it you? What?
Not me, but I would say one of our board members and initial founders, because this is a grassroots initiative for entrepreneurs, move out of MIT labs and they needed space and to continue their prototyping. So they moved to a South Boston warehouse, and then they found themselves that there were 15 entrepreneurs and they didn't know what to do. That's when Emily came in, our CEO, and helped them expand and move to Somerville. The 5th entrepreneur, Jason Etienne, moved to Houston about 3 years ago. And when he moved here, because his customers were here, so that was pretty big for him, he started telling Emily, I think we should consider Houston very seriously. And everything got catalyzed when they came 2 years ago to Sarah Week, the last Sarah Week we did in person. And both the Greater Houston Partnership and Houston Exponential and the City of Houston made sure that Emily and Jason met with partners here, not only corporate partners, investors, and they got a lot of interest. Some of the partners had already been very engaged in Boston, like Shell and Chevron. And, the excitement was there, but everything really changed when Emily and Jason decided to organize a happy hour, what we call our energy bar at Sarah Week, with a 2-day notice. And 100 entrepreneurs showed up. So that's when they realized, okay, there's a real startup ecosystem who needs a Greentown here. And of course, that was key. And then for sure, we are trying to fight climate change and solve it.
Of course.
And there's no way we can do it without the energy capital of the world, We cannot solve it from the East Coast and the West Coast. We need to get Houston involved.
Well, it's been very clear from the news and from press releases and, grand statements from the CEOs of the energy companies that energy transition is a key part of the strategy these days. And so it makes sense, being somebody from Houston, that energy growth and energy change and energy transition would be kind of created in a space like this. But from an outside, it's good to hear that somebody else was able to see that and take advantage of it. Now, just walk me through a day-to-day. And obviously, you've been building a lot recently, but let's kind of imagine the future self here when this is, full of lathes and drill presses and things like that, building things. What do you hope to see out of Greentown in 5 years?
Well, in 5 years, I hope we would already have a second building, and this one will be full. As I mentioned, we have 3 buildings in Boston, and we've grown every 2 years and a half. But we hope to have already a lot of partnerships between the companies that will be building things here and our corporations, our investors, and our ecosystem at large. In Houston, I think the ecosystem is less mature than it is in Boston. So we're taking the extra work of making sure that we do quite a lot of work in workforce development. There's a lot of people who have reached out to us. We have a lot of inbound with people who are in the oil and gas and want to transition, and they're asking us how to do it. I think we're also having an extra layer with the capital and making sure that our companies here get enough investment. So we're also taking on the role of educating a little bit our investor ecosystem here on investing in climate tech. And I really want these two other areas apart from the tech one. And of course, one that we're very interested about is all things DEI and climate justice. So those are our 4 pillars. We want them to be developed. But, the way I see it also is I think that there's quite a lot of companies from Boston that are going to come and stay in Houston. And this bridge we are creating from Houston and Boston is only going to go and grow stronger. Some of our companies, even before moving to this building, we had 30 companies that were early access members, and having this virtual membership got a lot of our Boston relationships. Some of them even got investment from Clean Energy Ventures, one of our partners in Boston. So we really want to strengthen that connection. And I think Houston is like a secret gem that many people don't know about. I think we're the engineering capital of the world. We are the renewable energy capital of the world. We're definitely a hydrogen hub. We have a lot of potential in circularity because, of course, we manufacture a lot of plastic and we need to figure out how to make the circularity there. And I think people don't realize that because the oil and gas branding sticks. But I think once people realize, we are a place of doers and of problem solvers, and we really want to tackle the biggest problems in the world, like cancer, going to Mars, and solving climate change. I think, once people realize that, they really feel like, there's a lot to be done here. And a lot of our team in Boston has moved and spent some time with us here in Houston and have been mind blown. And I think it's going to happen the same with a lot of partners and a lot of startups. So we're only going to see that.
Well, Julianna, I really, as an entrepreneur myself, I can really see the benefit of taking a thriving community and some of those members and importing them effectively to a brand new space and have them, give them the opportunity and the access to future entrepreneurs studying where I went to school down the street and helping them kind of get over those first couple of humps. So I can easily see, that hopefully your 5-year plan ends up being like a 2-year plan because you're growing so quickly. But I think it's interesting just catching the oil industry. It's a cyclical business. It goes up and down. It's clearly in a downturn right now. But that enables maybe or gives many employees the opportunity to really think about entrepreneurship as the next step for them. And coming to a space like Greentown where they can receive mentoring and receive help, and whether they want to lead a company or join a company that's already started, I can see that the opportunity and that's created by moving people together. What do you want people to know about you as the leader of this space here that you think can help them understand, personally what you would like to achieve here?
So I'm a connector and I'm a global citizen. I started my career in Singapore, then moved to London, French Riviera, and now Houston. And I come from the investment world. So a lot of our companies, what they really need the most is capital. So trying to make sure that we get that connection and that we also activate more investors, you know. I think many investors are eager to start investing in climate tech, but they don't know how. So we're going to try to also fill that void and help them get educated. And I think, climate change is global in nature. So a lot of our companies here have global perspective. A lot of our partners, our corporations who want to help our startups are also global. So, I think I also bring that global perspective of what comes next for Greentown as a whole, not only for Houston. That is going to be pretty interesting.
Well, I love the vision. Julianna, thank you so much for sitting down with us. I can't wait to talk to an entrepreneur in Greentown Labs here later today, and then also one of the legacy players, Scott from Halliburton Labs. Are you seeing the relationship with the kind of the incumbent innovators here in Houston as being helpful for you and your team, or do you kind of feel a little bit of competition?
Oh, no, totally. I mean, it's so helpful. You know, we are an incubator, so we don't have like this acceleration programming going on, except when it's corporate led. Some of our corporations decide that they have a specific challenge they want to run, and we lead those corporate led acceleration programs called launch programs. But the accelerator programs here, and Halliburton Labs, they are perfect deal flow, you know. So we're in Boston, many of our companies come from Mass Challenge, Y Combinator. Here we hope they will come from the Rise New Accelerator, and of course from Mass Challenge and Generator. And we hope that some of our companies here will also grow into Halliburton Labs, you know, because that's like a little later stage. Yeah. And we started seeing already how we can combine resources, not only physical, because they have amazing facilities, but also in terms of programming. We've already started, you know, sharing some programming, like our DEI workshops for startups, and, you know, I hope many other things.
Okay. Well, again, thanks so much for your time. I look forward to see what you build here, and look forward to coming back next year and seeing what's
You're always welcome.
All right. Thanks, Julianna.
Take care.
Okay. Well, Tech Radio, we're really glad to be sitting here with Scott from Halliburton Labs. And, you know, Halliburton, I understand, Halliburton Labs, you kind of do that as a normal course of business. Is that correct?
It's great to be here, Mark. Appreciate you having me. Scott Gale, Executive Director over Investments and Community Engagements with Halliburton Labs. You know, we're a startup in and of ourselves as a clean energy accelerator, and we launched summer of last year. And so we're excited to be coming up on our 1 year mark of being involved in this fashion.
So you launched last year. Halliburton obviously has been around for a while. How did it get started? What was the moment that created Halliburton Labs?
Yeah, the roots of Halliburton Labs go back a couple of years ago. There's a lot of effort to try and dig into how do we better engage with early stage companies as an organization, looking at other sources of innovation, et cetera. And so that eventually evolved into, with the dialogue that's unfolding around energy transition and kind of where the market trends are going, how could we marry those two things and combine that with the deep expertise that Halliburton have around, we've been involved for decades and decades in building the incumbent energy infrastructure that's out there. Right. And so our experience and capabilities around taking primarily what we like to call tangible tech to scale, hardware, chemistry, material science. We have access to all sorts of different disciplines, science and engineering. And so really tried to create an environment that was founder focused, that could bring those capabilities to bear and put them to work on behalf of the entrepreneur.
So when I think of Halliburton, you know, I think of equipment in the oil field, which is necessarily, and most people may not know how much technology really goes into the oil field and how many real problems are being solved, whether it's high temperature, corrosive gases, and environments like limited entry, or all these things that require, you know, brilliant minds to solve and develop solutions for, and then produce and scale those solutions and service not only North America, but also the globe. Do you see kind of a similar effort from the startups that you're bringing into Halliburton Labs? Do they really, what does it look and feel like for them?
I think certainly something that's underappreciated for Halliburton as an innovative company is that per investment dollar in patents granted, we're often in the top 50 of all companies, not just energy companies or oil and gas companies, but all companies. A number of years ago, we were averaging 1,200 patents a year. Wow. And so the amount of innovation that is happening inside of the organization is certainly something that I think goes underappreciated. Sure. But we recognize that we're not solving everything. We can't build everything. We're focused on upstream oilfield services primarily as a company, and that the energy system of the future will look different than what it is today. There's a lot of different things that are coming onto the horizon now. And so we certainly look to the startup community as a source of innovation. And I think that but for it to be a thriving source and to kind of build up that community, it needs a number of different things. It needs access to resources. It needs mentorship, advisement. It needs an environment where people can stand up and raise their hand and say, I'm ready to be an entrepreneur, and bring those ideas forward. Sure. And so that has all been really important for us as we've thought about and built the Halliburton Labs experience.
Well, I think it's very interesting, especially considering we're in the Greentown Labs lab space. How do you see the relationship between you and Greentown Labs? Are you fighting over the same companies? Do you see yourself in a different spot? Like, how do you interface with them?
It's a great question. We love Greentown Labs. We're really thrilled that they're here in town. Just couldn't be happier for the city of Houston to have landed somebody like a Greentown Labs. One of the things that sticks in my mind is a startup development organization like a Greentown Labs. If we look back, even just 5 or 6 years ago, there really were only about 5 across all kind of startup sectors, et cetera, in Houston. Right. And Halliburton Labs, I think, was 38th, and we're close to the end of the year, we'll have roughly 50 that are now here in town. Mm-hmm. And so for us, we see Greentown Labs as a great neighbor in the community. We share a fence line with them in terms of the kinds of companies that we're looking for, the types of resources that are needed. Not any one entity is going to be able to provide all of that. And so we really see Halliburton Labs as another voice in the choir amongst the Houston startup community. We share a fence line with Greentown in terms of the kinds of companies that we're looking at. Yeah. We often refer companies that we talk to that maybe aren't quite ready to take their technology to scale. They need a few other things in place. Yeah. Go spend some time with the folks at Greentown, get some of that completed and sorted out. Yeah. And then we love staying connected with the companies that are here at Greentown Labs, mm-hmm. because we really think that those that are kind of ready to take their tech to scale and that need those global scaling resources, and that are working on the things that we think that we can kind of help with, then we want to be there and ready and make sure that they're aware of the resources that are available. And so we really see it as a complementary arrangement and environment. And
that makes a lot of sense to me. As a software entrepreneur here in Houston, one of the things that I first thought when we were creating the company was that my idea was going to be so good that people would just run in and steal it. But reality is that scale is an underappreciated component of creating anything. And so where somebody like Greentown will help a startup kind of go through the early technical de-risking process and figure out, does this work? You are really jumping into, can this scale, and taking an existing technology with an existing kind of business case and growing that to the point where it's really starting to make an impact. Is that fair?
Yeah, and particularly our focus area and where we kind of saw there was a gap in resources available for entrepreneurs is around, it goes by a number of names: tangible tech, tough tech, deep tech, but hardware, material science, chemistry. Software is fantastic, really important, but it's easier to scale software because
100%
laptop in a coffee shop,
well,
like you
Amazon
can make some
and
things
Google
happen.
and Microsoft have commoditized the scaling of software. So
exactly, with cloud infrastructure that's in place, like it is super easy to kind of go from a concept to 10,000 users to iterate quickly. You can't do that with hardware, and it requires more patient capital. It requires resources and capabilities and for sure relationships. Those opportunities to demonstrate that tech is also really tough. And so having spent now well over 6 years inside of Halliburton, was in a global strategy role before looking after our hydraulic fracturing business, many different technologies came across my desk, and they were always looking for opportunities to demonstrate their technology. And so what we've done with Halliburton Labs is saying, we recognize that there are those gaps that are out there. There are needs for those specific entrepreneurs. And so we seek to put an industrial wrapper around them for a period of 12 months where they can then take their technology, get it demonstrated, think about that next pilot facility or that next step in scale. And so we really try and position ourselves as a scalerator, that we want them, as they exit our program, that they are that much better prepared for scale and that they can take years off of their development cycle and save a bunch of money along the way, come out with a bunch of new relationships and connections as they go forward. And that was a gap that we identified kind of in the startup community broadly, and was something that we felt like with the right structure and framework in place that we could seek to fill that gap and create that environment.
Certainly, that makes sense to me. Now, Halliburton is a global company. You could have put Halliburton Labs anywhere in the world. Why Houston?
So our global headquarters is here in Houston. We've got a lot of great resources and capability here in town, but we are a global company. So when I look at the 4 companies that we're supporting today, only one of them is in Houston. When I look at our finalists that'll be pitching this upcoming Friday on the 21st as a part of our pitch event, there's 11 companies. They're in 6 different time zones. Yeah. And so we look for and scout companies all over the world. We have resources all over the world, and those resources are available. Now, we're We're still in our early days, so we haven't kind of yet had the opportunity to flex some of those capabilities. Sure. But we have active discussions about, hey, what do resources in Australia and Singapore look like? Could we use a facility in Rio? What is our footprint in the UK or in Saudi Arabia? All of these kinds of things. And so that footprint that we have and our global reach is something that I think we have not yet put to work in the way that we know that we will as we go forward.
So thinking about the kinds of companies that come into Halliburton and maybe, the impact, and you've been growing over this last year, what do you see in 5 years? Like, what's the mission of Halliburton Labs? What's the impact going to be? Like, how do you think about and conceptualize that step?
For us, we know that the energy transition is real. It's unfolding before us now. I often say that sort of we will look back 5 years from now or 10 years from now and see this time as an inflection point in the overall kind of narrative around energy. But we also know that energy system in the future, whatever time frame, 5 years, 25 years, it'll be different than what it is today. Sure. But it's also, if you look at the amount of resources that are going to be required, the amount of investment that's going to be needed for us to get there and kind of usher in this new energy system of the future, we really are a drop in the bucket. I mean, we need a Tesla a year for like the next 20 years to be able to like get to what we need to achieve if we're really going to accomplish the goals that as a society we've set out for ourselves, whether those are climate related or emissions related or otherwise. And so for us, 5 years from now, we hope to have the reputation of being the go-to place to scale energy tech. And we anticipate bringing on somewhere between 12 and 15 companies a year. We do that in 3 different cohorts. And so we'll have this finalist day that I mentioned now. Our last one was December of last year. Our next one will be end of September this year and January the following. And so if we're successful in doing that, we'll have spent 12 months with 75 different companies in all sorts of different parts of the energy landscape. And so for us, that enables us to keep an ear to the ground of kind of how that's evolving, but then also have better tuned capabilities for early stage companies that are trying to go make that happen.
So pretend I'm an employee at an oil and gas company or other company here in Houston, and I'm trying to think about the career and what's next for me. Is there a way to look at what openings might be created as a result of a cohort going through your system? And how would they get in touch with you? Is that something you welcome in terms of resume building and all that kind of thing?
One of the ways that I maybe would take that is sort of we kind of zoom out and say sort of the skill sets that are here in the city of Houston. Every engineering and science discipline is represented here. When you think about not just energy, but also the medical community, space tech, all the things that are here. And so the area is seeded with the right talent to be able to take the energy transition forward. And so there's no doubt in my mind that there will be a lot of opportunities for anybody with a lot of those engineering and science skill sets to transition to whatever part of their career that they would like. And so for sure, the companies that we look at, they often are starting with founding teams of maybe 3 to 5 individuals, but they're in the process of hiring 10, 20, 30, 40 folks. And so, like I said, a lot of these companies energy is important around the world. Right. And so while many of them have Houston on their radar, we talk to companies in Israel or Italy or the UK or Canada, and all of them that are solving energy problems have Houston on their radar. Sure. And in part because of the resource and talent that is here and the understanding of what energy at scale really means. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your time today, Scott, and look forward to hearing more good news out of Halliburton Labs and the companies that come through your cohorts. Is there anything you'd like to leave with Tech Rodeo as a parting gift?
Sure. Would just love to say that think about Halliburton Labs if you're solving clean energy challenges. Go to halliburtonlabs.com. Our application process is open year-round. We review those 3 times a year. Follow us on social media. And don't hesitate to reach out. We've got a couple of new exciting things that we'll be launching next Friday that will help to kind of bring the community even a bit closer together. And it's an exciting time to be in the clean energy space.
Awesome, Scott. Can't wait. Go be someone.
All right. Thanks, Martin. Stay well.